Hey everyone, it's Chad and Jen here for your grid method help session. So let's get started. Hey Jen, how are you tonight? How are you feeling on this Sunday evening?
I'm doing great. Had a great restful weekend, so charged up.
Absolutely. I love it. You are always so positive. And you write books on helping teachers stay positive. So that's, that makes sense.
I can't help it.
I love it. You're a perpetual optimist and positive thinker. I absolutely love it. And that's one of the reasons I love having you on these chats so we can help our amazing audience with basically anything they need. So you and I were talking, before we kind of went live, and there were a couple ideas that we thought people might be interested in talking about. But of course, if you want to talk about something else, make sure you ask us in the comments, and we're happy to talk about those things too. Nikki Jacoby, one of our amazing grid method teachers and ambassadors, is just signed on. Nikki, I hope you're having a great Sunday night. So Jen, what are some of those things you think might help a few people out as they enter into this week, especially here in Ohio? COVID cases are running rampant. Schools are literally in all sorts of different places, depending on where you're at and what's going on in your county, state, town, whatever that is. So what do you think our nation needs right now before they start asking us questions, which they can do?
Let's see. We have two ideas. I think the first one is if you want to start jumping into grid, we can talk about some baby steps, how to gradually get into grid without making it too overwhelming for you and your kids. And then we've got kids who may be in grid, like maybe you've done it this whole semester or maybe for years. And maybe there's some kids that are not staying as engaged as you might like them to be. Maybe they're their interest or the novelty is worn off and you're like, oh my goodness, how can I keep them, going and reaching farther in the grid? So both of those.
Yeah, so those are two really, I think, topical things we can discuss, right? If you're a teacher who's never tried the grid method before and you're like, how do I start? What are some of those little steps I can take to kind of start dipping my toe into the grid waters? Or my students are either not engaged in the grid or I want to engage them better in the grid. Those are two topics I think that could help, especially with remote learning and a couple other things. So we have enough people watching us that they can comment what they want to talk about. I'm going to let the audience, I'm going to do some awkward wait time, which doesn't work very well on Facebook Live, by the way. So they better respond quickly. What are you guys thinking? Do you have your own questions? So is it other? Is it baby steps? Or is it engagement? Let's hear what you guys have to say. Hopefully I'll see some comments coming in. And if not, we'll just roll with one of those. Maybe I'll roll a dice or something. It'll be fun either way. Absolutely. So Nikki, Kate, great to see you. And we have plenty of people watching from across the internet. So that is absolutely fantastic. So I'm still waiting on a couple people to comment. And even if they don't, I think we can get started. So Jen, let's talk about engagement in the grid method, right? Let's talk about keeping kids engaged in grids. And what does that mean? If I'm a student, if a teacher, and I'm like, I love this, it's been going really well, but all of a sudden I notice kids don't seem as engaged. Maybe they're kind of, they say they're getting tired of it or something like that. What does that tell you? What does that tell you as the educator in the room?
So it's time for me to start reflecting and maybe asking questions. So if kids are not engaged, maybe they're kind of like, oh, are we doing grid again today? Something's off. So typically it's time for me to check in with kids and see what they're thinking about the grid. Are there things too easy? Holy moly, all the comments just went, are things too easy? Are things too hard? Or are they too repetitive? Are they doing something that's about the same every single day?
Yeah.
Are the learning opportunities truly learning opportunities, or is it busy work? Because that's going to really discourage a child.
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head there, I think. So first of all, talk to your kids. Ask them why they are disengaging, if they're in the class, if they're out of the class, if they're remote. But I see this a lot with teachers that use a single modality, okay? And this is like the cardinal sin of grid method, I think, is when you're like, every single box is a page out of this workbook, or every single box is going to this software and watching a video. So like things like Khan Academy, Alex for math, things like the workbook pages, those are all okay things in and of themselves. But if it's all you're doing in your grid, your students are going to disengage because they're going to get bored and they're going to go, I don't feel like I'm growing because I'm just doing the same modality over and over and over again. And they will absolutely tell you. And here's another thing. If you just have your kids getting on the computer to Google Classroom every day, that's still just getting on the computer, right? Are they ever having to do anything with their hands or mix up those modalities and do other things off the computer, paper, pencil, and those types of things? So really evaluating your grids, I think, is a really great step, because most of the time it's not the ownership, it's not the self-pacing, it's not the framework itself, it's the things that the teacher is doing. And something I often say, Jen, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, and what's engaging for kids doesn't change whether you're doing the grid method or you're not doing the grid method, right?
Yep.
So I tell teachers all the time, like, no kid's ever been excited for chapter 7. Like, that's never happened in the history of education. That doesn't mean you can't use chapter 7, but you shouldn't just be using chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 in your grid. You have to mix it up, right? If it's engaging in your classroom without the grid, it can still be utilized in the grid. It doesn't mean that because you're doing this self-paced thing, that you can't do some of these other engaging activities. So Cody McNeely actually asked us a question. So I'm going to kind of put a little pin in the engagement talk, and I want to cover this because I think this is really important. Okay. So Cody says he's new to the grid method, and how might this work when you only teach 12 to 20 minutes out of 45 minutes per online class meeting? I have some follow-up questions for Cody, because if you have 45 minutes, like, why do you only have 20 minutes to teach? Like, that's sort of a general question I have. But let's just take him at his word for the question. So, like, how does the grid method work when you only have that 20 minutes live? I'm going to let you respond to this, and then I will follow up, because I know you'll have some great ideas here.
Okay. So I have two things. One, it could be that could be time for you to do the lesson, if there's like some kind of mini lesson to get them started, or some kind of intro before they start the day. And the other idea is that could be your time to give feedback. If the kids are all working and they're all individualized, they're all self-paced, they're all at different areas on the grid, that could be you to pull, like, okay, everyone on 3B, we're going to chat for a second. And I'm thinking that you have open your class for 45 minutes. That's kind of my idea, is that you have it open, even though you're just allowed to teach for a little bit of time. Like, you're still getting feedback. That's where, like, the nitty gritty is. Like, that's the awesome stuff, is that feedback to help them grow and go on to the next learning activity. So what do you think?
I absolutely agree. I'm rereading this, and I better understand what he's saying is that they are expected to teach 12 to 20 minutes. So I absolutely agree. What I would do is a 10 to 12 minute mini lesson almost every day. Just kind of get them engaged, have a conversation, talk about maybe goal writing, do a mini lesson or a review, an example question, depending on the type of class you teach. And then I'm going to spend the rest of that time. So let's say you take 12 minutes. That still leaves 33 minutes of intervention and support. Here's the truth. If you are remote right now, you should not be wasting your time remotely just spewing information to your students. That, to me, makes zero sense. I'm sorry, Jen, I'm going a little crazy here, but this really, really bothers me, right? This really, really bothers me, because you have now made yourself replaceable by a YouTube video. Okay? Like, you only have such a little and limited amount of time with your students. Why would you waste it having all of them be quiet and just talking at them? That doesn't make any sense. What you need to be doing is having an interactive discussion when that lesson's occurring in that 12 to 15 minutes. You need to be asking them specific questions. And then you really need to go into that intervention, that individual, that small group. If you have Google Classroom or Zoom, you can do breakout rooms right now. You can do breakout rooms. So Brian Arnott, it's great to see you. Mary, great to see you. Marcos, absolutely awesome to see you. Someone misses Jen. Mary Ritter says she misses you. So I hope that was helpful, Cody. I think that's how I would use it. That's actually a lot of how I did run my classroom. It was, a quick mini lesson, goals, like review, and then boom, let's get to work. Now I'm helping individuals. Now I'm helping small groups and things like that. Same concept remotely, but now you can make those small groups based on your progress monitoring, right? Because you have all that data right there and it's available to you. Mm-hmm. And Kem Toasty says, I would have to say using the grid for the first time has exponentially allowed me to give specific feedback and support for students. So let's give Danielle some snaps and some claps because that is absolutely awesome. That probably means Danielle is doing the right things, okay? Because when you're getting that sort of result, that means you're running it the right way, because that is truly what is supposed to be happening in a grid method classroom. That doesn't mean it's always going to be perfect. So Brian, who is a passionate educator I've had the pleasure of working with, he's super inquisitive, is always trying to go extra, that next step for a student. So Brian, I love and appreciate all the work that you do. And he says the hard part is getting students to ask questions or accept help when they need it. So Brian, this to me, and Jen, please chime in. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited now. This for me is where the small group and some of the one-on-one pullouts, even if it's digitally, become very, very important. A lot of times in a big group, students are much less likely to kind of ask for help, and they're much less likely to engage in the conversation. However, if you get a small one-on-one breakout room or a great breakout room with 2 or 3 kids, now maybe there are going to be less barriers there for them to kind of open up and connect. Also, Brian, ask specific questions to specific students as much as you possibly can. So something I do in our workshops, when I have a group of teachers that's not engaging, and I know they're different than students, I absolutely am aware, but I'll say something like, Jen, how you feeling today? I absolutely love that. Even if Jen doesn't have to respond to that, she's now a little bit more comfortable in the room because I've used her name. She knows I see her and I can engage with her in that way. So looking for those. So that's awesome. So Brian does have them in individual breakout rooms, which is absolutely fantastic. So Brian, let us know, and Jen, I'll let you kind of chime in here while he's maybe thinking about this. Let us know, is it that they're just like muted and no video and you're by yourself in a breakout room with them? Or is it that, they're in a smaller breakout room and still not engaging? I just want to dig a little deeper if you don't mind, and maybe we can talk about your individual question. But what are some of your thoughts on how to get kids to respond and engage in those small breakout rooms?
So something I was thinking, I have a 5th grade teacher who we did remote for 2 weeks. And so during her time, she had a really hard time keeping the kids with her in one big Google Meet. Kids were jumping on the trampoline and she's just like, oh my goodness, this is not going well. So she regrouped and decided to use her time really flexibly. She had an hour and a half and she broke them into small groups, and they each one had their own meeting link so that she only had 3 to 5 kids in one group, and she could strategize there, and so then you have this really quaint group of kids, and you're all talking the same language here. And then she was done with that group, they were able to do something independently, and the next group came on. And I just thought that was such a good reflection and good use of her time. It kind of goes away from that traditional, like, we've got to keep the whole class on that whole time. So it moved it to more effective teaching. So I love that. So absolutely. Susan, shout out to you.
Yeah, good job, Susan. Great job. So Brian said that he likes the specific questions idea. Brian, that is a really, really great way. Because if you say you're just fine, if I go, Jen, do you need any help? That's fine. Okay, awesome. There's a couple other people in here. Could you explain the first step of number 7 for me? Since you're fine, right? Like, that would be an example of like, now I'm asking you a specific question because it's based on the feedback you gave me that you're fine. And let's be honest, I think we can all agree that I'm fine is the universal answer any teenager gives to any question, regardless if it's academic. I asked my own teenage son any question and he says he's fine, whether he's actually fine or not. So Brian, I feel your pain there, but I think that funneling your questions is the best. Just that good instructional practice of funneling questions is really the great way. So if they say they're fine, ask another question that's deeper, right? So if you say, do you need any help? No. Do you understand this, the first step of the process in this aspect? You're fine there. Okay. Do you understand how you switch the sign or whatever? I don't know what subject you're, focused on, but like asking those deeper questions and funneling those pieces can be absolutely great. So Brian, Nikki says she has the same issue. Here's another tip. And then I'm going to be quiet because Jen's probably holding on some golden nuggets and I'm just sucking up all the air in this. I'm so sorry. Here's the thing. Sometimes asking students about non-academic things can break down barriers so they will talk about academic things. So if you're just hitting your head against a wall, have a quick conversation about something that's not the activity that you're doing. Get them to access you and engage with you that way, and then go, okay, so let's get back to this thing. How are you doing on number 7? Or how are you doing on this activity? Now you've started the dialogue, and now you can now transition that dialogue back to the academic content, which can also be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking some people do like a quick check-in with kids before they get started, like a little Google form, and it just says, how are you feeling today? What do you what's going well? What do you need help with? Just 3 quick questions, and then that information all comes in before you start your class. And you're like, ooh, I need to check in with Stephanie today, and I need to check in with Brian today. So, so something like that, just to kind of get those feelers going. And then what about asking the kids to respond in the chat box privately to you or to the whole group, that just says, okay, so I just went over number 1. How clear do you feel on a scale of 1 to 5? 5, you got it. Something like that, just to get quick and right way. You've scanned and you're like, ooh, you didn't respond. Hey, kind of reaching out that way. Or
that is something I literally didn't even think about, is using the chat to engage if they're not engaging verbally. So that is a really great technique I use all the time when I'm working with teachers that maybe are a little less engaged at first, or they're shy, or they don't want to really have the conversation. I'll do something called a whoosh. And what a whoosh is, everyone that's watching this can steal this and use it in their Zoom calls tomorrow. It works. Kids love it. It's great. So here it is. You ask a question, tell kids to type their answer, but do not press enter, right?
Yeah.
You say, hey, everyone, what's the first step? Don't press enter. We're going to do a whoosh, okay? And a whoosh is everyone types their answer, and then you go 1, 2, 3, whoosh, and everyone presses enter, and you get a lot of answers, right? So no one's really feeling left out. No one's really feeling called out, but everyone gets to participate and have the conversation. Now you can kind of scroll through the chat and go, who's getting it? Who's not getting it? Where are kids at? But it's really getting them to engage. And you can do that with a group of 5 or a group of 30, and it's the same act. It's the exact same thing. So it's absolutely.
That'd be fun for a vocabulary review or something, just to get them warmed up,
Yeah, and it's literally something I do early on so I can get that participation. So engagement in general and participation in general is a learned thing. If I walk in and all of the attention is on me and I'm just talking and you are passive, you are going to learn to be more passive, right? If I'm never asking you to engage or giving you the opportunity to engage, you are going to disengage because there's no reason for you to do so. But if at the beginning of the thing, I'm going to ask and expect that you're going to engage and we're going to have this conversation, and I make jokes about it all the time, like, wow, this is awkward because no one is typing in this chat. Just be okay with that and face it head on. But Absolutely, absolutely. Like you have to give them the opportunity to engage early and often, especially in that first 10 to 15 minutes. So you're teaching them this is not going to be a passive experience. You need to be active in this process.
When I think about the grid and the activities they do on a grid that could, we talked about just doing workbook pages and doing the same thing over and over. So that's kind of passive learning too. They just know it's going to be the same thing and they don't feel super empowered. So if you have them jump into something and they have to go do it and then come back, there's this whole, I think that engages them more and it empowers them more. They're like, I'm in charge of doing this right now. Like I have to go do something. It's not just the same thing over and over.
Absolutely. And that can also be a really great way to build organic collaboration. So if you're using the grid, right, you might have breakout rooms that are based on levels or boxes that kids are on. You might have a breakout for 1A, a breakout for 1B, and a breakout for 1C. And you could easily be like, every one of your goals is to get out of the room that you're in by the end of the class. You know what I mean? Now we go to a breakout room and we're like, I guess we're all working on 1A together. You know what I mean? And now we're in a small group, so we're not alone. So we can organically collaborate because we're a homogenous group at that point. In terms of our cognitive level and our understanding. Now we can have a conversation about what's going on, and the teacher's going to be checking in on us in a couple minutes, so we better get on task. So absolutely. New pedagogy is shaping. We are shaping new pedagogy, Jen. That is my favorite quote of all time ever on, I think, our Sunday night chats. That is awesome. So Kem Toasty, or Danielle, I believe is their name, says she plans to use a Google form and have students create 2 to 5 questions with sentence starters. So on level 2, what would a blank be or something like that? That's absolutely a great idea. The other cool thing you can do is use something like a Google or Poll Everywhere, by the way, is a great live tactic where you can literally say, everyone get your cell phones out and text your answer. And you're seeing a graph go on the screen, driving that engagement. That's what I'm doing with that 12 minutes we talked about at the beginning. I'm doing some interactive discussion, not necessarily like a lecture, but maybe a little bit. Right. But then I'm getting right into that discussion, that interactivity, training them to be engaged, training them to be active. Now we're going to go work on our own and our independent work. I'm going to be around because we're going to have a great day. Now they're really focused. And Jen, to me, I think that's the biggest thing I see. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but the biggest thing I see is that people are using the remote learning space of the classroom, which is the Zoom call or the Google Meet, to disseminate like information for long periods of time. And I just don't think that's how it needs to be utilized, right? I think that's the biggest sort of misconception about remote learning and remote teaching. We think if they're with us, we have to synchronously give them the same information at the same amount of time. When to me, they need help. They need support. They need coaching. They need to laugh and like the experience that they're doing. To me, I want to make that 12 minutes really exciting and interactive, and maybe there's a little bit of lecture in there, but I want the biggest bulk of that time to be students working while I help them. And I don't know how to get that across to everybody in the country right now, but like if you're wasting the 30 to 40 minutes you have live with your kids spewing information at them, you're wasting your 30 to 45 minutes you have with your kids. Like you just are at a certain point, because when they get off that Zoom call, they have to do work. And when they have a question, they're going to ask their parents or they're going to ask someone else, or they're not going to have anyone to go to. And then they're stuck. And that's when they're going to disengage, right?
Yep. Yes. Get on your soapbox. I think, when people are wanting to do their lesson, I mean, it's, you're in class and you do the lesson, but you can read the kids and you can check in and you can walk around. And so instead of doing that, if you think of that, say even a 30-minute chunk that you want to say, put it into like 5 or 6 minute chunks and then throw that up on the grid. And that's 3C and that's 2A and that's 1B. Like there's your little learning chunk. I want you to listen to this and I want you to go do this thing. And then your feedback is like, that's how you're reinforcing all that thing. So it's segmented chunks instead of just watching, oh gosh, she's going on and on. I'm just going to sit here and listen to her. Or maybe I'll go jump on my trampoline.
Right. Absolutely. Let's be honest. So let's have the real conversation that needs to happen right now. So I'm going to drop a truth bomb on every single teacher in the country that's watching this right now. And it's not going to be easy. We have become wallpaper if we choose to be wallpaper. Like companies in the world, corporations spend billions of dollars trying to get the public to act, purchase, and engage with their products and or services. We are now a commercial for our content for our students. So here's my question. What kind of ad are we putting out for them to engage with us? If I'm just going, hey, I'm going to become wallpaper, I'm going to become the news in the doctor's office in the background, I can't expect my students to not go jump on a trampoline because I'm not asking anything of you. I'm not asking for you to act in any way, shape, or form. I'm expecting you, because I said so, to just engage with me because. And the truth is, that's ridiculous. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Us as adults do not do that. Like, as adults, we do not engage with things that don't engage with us. We do not engage with things that don't act. Like, there have literally been so many marketing and like advertising books written on how to get your customer base to act. Well, I'm sorry, everybody, but our students right now are there are clients, there are public that need to engage with what we're doing. And here's the best part. It's not the best part for us, but they can turn us off. They
change the channel, right?
Yes, they can change the channel. They can mute us. So what are we doing to give them a reason to not mute us, to not change the channel? What action are we asking them to take? And here's the truth. If we do what you said, right? And I love what you said. Let's say you're running the grid method and you have 12 minutes of whole group instruction. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, hey, everyone, today our whole group instruction is going to be on 1B. If you're not on 1B or you're past 1B, you can go into your breakout room right now. Everyone who's on 1B is getting whole group instruction, intensive instruction, and we are going to go over 1B together. And now everyone that's on 1B should be really excited to get that help because maybe they're stuck on 1B or maybe they just started. So absolutely. And Mary just said maybe her bachelor's in marketing is helpful. So let's talk about Dave Burgess's keynote speech at the Teach Better conference real quick. I'm going to do a flashback. He said one thing. He said, would your kids come to class if they didn't have to be there? That is his biggest takeaway. Like, that's his biggest message. I'm sorry if I butchered that, Dave. I truly apologize. But if teachers didn't have to come to your class, would they?
Would they buy tickets to your show?
Yes.
Right?
Would they buy tickets? Would they spend their quality entertainment value in their time watching your channel? And if the answer is they have to, you're doing it wrong. Right? We are no longer locking them into a room. Not locking, you know what I mean. We are no longer having them as a captive audience. They can change the channel. So if we're teachers, I know we're stressed. I know this is literally the hardest time in education that there's ever been in the history of education. But right now is when we have to innovate and give them a reason to tune in, a reason to engage, a reason to act while we have them in the room, as opposed to expecting them to just act once they've turned us off, because that's a really bad strategy. Oh, yeah.
Do you feel better?
Wow. Man, I didn't know this was going to turn this way, but this is an exciting Mastery Chat help for me. I'm just...
I think I'm sweating.
I am. I'm definitely sweating. I burned an extra 100 calories just on this. Check my little fitness tracker there. But But yeah, that's my take on like this remote learning thing right now. Like they can turn us off.
You know what would be cool? Having your kids create like a little 1-minute commercial for your class, or even an intro. You know that Teach Better intro that was so jazzy and fun? Like
Yeah.
it like made me want to be at the Teach Better conference again. Like what if your kids could create something like that for your show, like it's your brand, and you played it at the beginning of class every day to like, hook them. I don't know, just give them one more little thing to empower and take ownership of this whole remote learning thing.
I love it. Absolutely. Are you entertaining enough for your kids to keep you on? I think we can leave our audience with that question.
Phew. Yeah.
Right? Like that's something to ponder. If your students didn't have to come to your class, would they? Is a universal question that you can ask whether you're live or remote. But if you're remote, they no longer have to stay. They can just press mute. So what are we doing? Whether you're using the grid, giving them empowerment, using multiple modalities, what can we do to have them keep the channel on? What can we do to keep them engaged in the process of learning? Wow. Any parting words before we say good night and wish everyone an awesome week, Jen?
Everybody take a deep breath. You can do this.
Thanks for grounding us right there, because I was just going to keep going just crazy over here in a second. I was getting way too excited. So take a deep breath. I feel better already just by doing that. That's amazing.
See? Yeah.
There you go. So everyone take a deep breath. Enjoy your students, whether you have them live or remote. Make those connections. Give them the reason they need to engage. Be the reason that they're happy to sign on to school. Give
love
them
that.
the reason. All right. Everyone, have a fantastic Sunday. Jen, thank you as always. You are amazing. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.